Hi, I'm Mr. York, and I'm here today with Ms. Johnston, who teaches sixth grade in Hesperia Unified School District, and she's going to tell us a little bit about what it's like to be a teacher, as well as how she got into it. To start off with, our first question that we ask everyone is, can you tell us a little bit about where you went to high school, what that was like, and when you were in high school, did you know what you wanted to do?
So I went to San Dimas High School in San Dimas, home of Bill and Ted.
Excellent!
I was really involved in a lot of different activities in school, and I had a really good idea already what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to work with kids in some capacity. Thought I was going to go into child psychology or teaching. Teaching eventually won out because I had pretty good mentors in high school who sort of helped steer me that direction.
So it's always nice if you know what you're going to do. You went through high school and you kind of said, I know what I want to do. And so, how did you decide on the college or university that you went to? And of course, where did you actually go to school?
I was looking for programs that were tailored to education, obviously, since I knew I wanted to go into teaching. I chose to go to Azusa Pacific University. They had a really good elementary ed program, so that was pretty much the deciding factor for that.
Tell us about Azusa Pacific University. We know it's a private university. How does that differ from other places that you could have gone, maybe? What did you think about that decision?
Okay, so I looked into several other universities, ultimately decided Azusa Pacific because it aligned with kind of my values and it was a good choice. I think at the time I made a lot of good friends and the programs were amazing. I had really great professors. Um, Looking back, sometimes I think it might have not been a bad idea to go with a state school. I looked into Cal State Fullerton, which also had a really good elementary ed program. So I decided APU. But again, looking back, sometimes I think if I'd gone state school, could have saved some money or something like that. It would have been a much cheaper program, and I still would have gotten the same quality education.
Do you think that when you went to apply for teaching jobs, did it hold a lot of weight that you went to a private university? Did that help in any way, you think?
I don't know that it did necessarily. Like I said, Cal State Fullerton also has a really good elementary ed program, and it's also well revered within our state. So I could have gone either route, and I think it would look just as good either way.
So you graduated from college and you've got your degree. What came next?
Well, immediately, I did not go into teaching right away. I worked for a few years. I had to go back to school to get my teaching credential before I could actually start teaching. So, in the meantime, I worked a couple of retail jobs and I also started substitute teaching just to kind of reaffirm that education was where I wanted to go. And then I did go back to school so that I could get my teaching credential so that I could eventually get into my own classroom.
And it's kind of nice that in this profession, we have a system set up so that you can kind of try it out, if you will.
Yeah.
There's very few other professions where you're allowed to do that in such a total capacity where you can you can even long-term sub to where you have to grade and come up with curriculum, and it's pretty much every aspect of being a teacher sometimes. So you went to Azusa Pacific University, and then you had to go to a credential program. Tell us about multiple subject credentialing, and is there any specific subject that you specialize in that program, or is it really, as it suggests, everything? And what does that allow you to teach?
So, with the multiple subject credential, that's what allows you to teach elementary school. Actually, I could teach middle school as well. Most middle schools, I think, do look for a single subject, though. They're looking for specialties in a subject because most middle school teachers are teaching only one subject. But technically, I could teach middle school as well.
So, what is the test like that you have to take, or what is the coursework like? Do you study every subject that you teach as an elementary school teacher?
Yes, so with with the credential program, you do coursework in all subjects. It's mostly pedagogical things, so how you would go about teaching a certain subject in elementary school. They give you different strategies that you would use to teach the various subjects. So we would take a science class, but it was a how to teach science, and a math class, how to teach math, not so much the subject itself.
So then did you have to take a test to show proficiency in all of those subjects, even though your classes were more specific about how to teach, as you say, pedagogically? Um, Pedagogy is how to do something as opposed to the actual subject matter itself. In single subjects, we have to take a subject matter competency, which means that we have to actually show proficiency in our subject. But as a multiple subject teacher, do you have to take a test or something that does basically the same thing, but in every subject?
Yes, actually, before I even began the credential program, I had to take what's called the CSET, multiple subject. And so I did have to show proficiency in all subjects, essentially, before I even started the credential program. And then once that was passed, I was able to get into the credential program, and that's where we started the pedagogical studies.
And so you get through all of that. You did your student teaching. Do you want to tell us about where you did your student teaching at? Because I think that's
yeah.
interesting, since it was so different from where you actually ended up, right? They try to give you kind of a variety with your student teaching, especially in multiple subject.
Yeah, so something we have to do before we finish our credential program or as part of the credential program is what Mr. York is saying, student teaching. We go into other classrooms with what's called a master teacher. So we have a teacher who kind of oversees us, and we take over teaching lessons within their class to give us some practical practice before we actually become teachers ourselves. So I student taught in a second grade class first, which second grade was lower than I ever thought I wanted to teach. I always wanted to do upper elementary or higher. I actually fell in love with those kids, so now I'm like, maybe I could teach second grade. And that was my first semester, and then the second semester I student taught in a sixth grade class. And actually I'm in sixth grade now, so that was actually a really good background for me and showed me what I really liked about that grade level before ending up in a sixth grade class myself.
So technically, you can teach K through, in some cases, eighth grade, or even in English, you mentioned going up to like ninth grade.
Mm-hmm.
But we consider upper elementary, where does it start? Is it fourth, fifth, and sixth?
Yes.
Is that upper elementary?
Yes.
And then what do we call K through third?
Primary.
Primary elementary education or classes. So you knew that you wanted to do upper, and then you did your student teaching, had some experience in second grade, and then you got hired somewhere to teach what grade?
Initially, I was hired to teach fifth grade. So I taught fifth grade for 3 years.
And now you're teaching
And now I'm
sixth
teaching
grade.
sixth grade.
And is that a huge difference as far as subject matter?
It's not a huge difference. In our district, sixth grade is still at the elementary level. I rolled over with fifth graders from last year, so I'm still with a lot of the same kids. Social studies is very different. That's the only thing that
Because
I
you're
think
covering a different time period.
is a lot different. Yeah.
So you have to know that time period as well.
Right.
So you got a job, and now this is what year of teaching for you?
At my current school, it's the first public school that I've worked at, and this is my 5th year there.
And prior to teaching there, were you teaching someplace else?
I did teach at a private school for 3 years before I got hired at this school, yes.
What kind of a private school was that?
A Chinese language teaching private school. So they taught all the same subjects as a normal school, but they also incorporated Chinese language arts. So all of the students there were taking Chinese for 2 hours out of the day.
And did you teach Chinese?
Oh gosh, no.
Do you know a little Chinese?
I know a very small amount, a few key phrases here and there.
Mandarin or Cantonese?
Mandarin.
And where did you learn most of your Mandarin that you may have used to say like hello or little things here and there to your students?
Most of it I learned while I was living in Shanghai
And how long did you live in Shanghai for?
for a year.
And how did you get that position?
So that was a teaching job as well. I finished my credential program here, and it was at a time when it was difficult to be hired as a teacher due to the recession. So I found an opportunity with Disney, of all places, to teach English in China. So I applied for that, was hired immediately, and picked up and moved to China for a year.
So very cool. We talk a lot about luck, timing, taking advantage of opportunities. And in this case, you actually had an opportunity to go to China, thought, hey, that'd be really cool. I'm going to go teach there for a year. You took what you learned while you were living in China for a year, working essentially for the Disney Corporation, who was opening up Shanghai Disney at that time, and so that was kind of an agreement with the government. You come back here with now some skills working with that culture. You put those to work in a Chinese language school, and can we say the name of the school?
It's Suchi.
Suchi, which some people might be familiar with. There's several branches in Southern California. So I think here in Walnut is the preschool. That's what I was thinking of, and I was thinking maybe some of our students might have even gone there or been familiar with it. You were working for the one where though?
Monrovia.
And what grades were those?
So I was at the elementary school actually, and it was the only elementary school here in Southern California at the time. And the school itself went K through 5, and I taught grades 3, 4, and 5 while I was there.
That's a lot.
Yeah. I only taught math and science, and I taught it for those 3 grades.
Very cool. So you taught 3 grades, which was a great experience. You took your experience working with Disney, and then you went and took that and you went into a public school, and now you work for Hesperia Unified, and now Disney is no longer employing people. Not in most avenues, because there's a lot of people working for the park right now that are not. So during this time,
That's true.
Disney is not doing as much. And so it's really interesting. We talk about that flexibility of being able to make choices and carve a path through your employment. And it sounds like you did a really great job of navigating that, using your experience, taking opportunities, and being flexible enough to go move someplace else. And now you're able to put all that together. And that's really cool. So looking back, given all the choices that you had, it seems like it worked out pretty well. Do you feel like now in your 5th year of teaching that you made the right decision and this is the profession that you should be in? Or is there something else that you've always wanted to do that you'd like to do as well?
100%, I think I made all the right choices to get to where I am now. I absolutely love the school that I work at. I can't imagine a different job right now.
All right, so you're in the job that you obviously want to be in. What comes next? I know that you've had some leadership opportunities in your school. Is that the direction that you want to go within education, or what would be the next thing to do?
So I've toyed with the idea of getting my master's in different areas. I don't have my master's degree yet. Leadership was one avenue I was considering. I was on the lead team for my grade level for 2 years. I also always thought of going in the counseling direction. As I mentioned earlier, I was kind of between child psychology and teaching. When I ultimately decided to go into teaching, I feel like going the counseling direction would be a nice compromise sort of between the two. So I'm looking forward to beginning a master's program in educational counseling.
And lastly, we don't talk about teaching as being something that pays a lot of money, but nevertheless, you're actually looking to purchase your first home.
I am. I'm very excited. I'm actually in the process already. I found a brand new build in North Fontana, which, since I work in Hesperia, is a pretty decent commute distance from where I'm working. It's a condo, 3 bedrooms, 2.5 baths.
It's a big condo.
But it's going to be brand new. I got to pick out my cabinets, my counters, my flooring, and all of that. So I'm very excited. It's going to be mine.
That is super exciting. I want to thank you so much for your time and for coming and speaking with us today. We wish you all the best and congratulations on your new home.
Thank you.
For Chaparral Middle School, I'm Mr. York. Thanks so much for joining me.